The Burrow is the paranoia turned into space. It is the literal embodiment of the opposition and the coincidence in this opposition of heimlich and unheimlich, of the homely and the uncanny. The home being at all points haunted by the uncanny and coinciding with it. Now, at the precise middle of this story, I will not dwell on the first part at all. There is a shift, which brings all this paranoia to a pinnacle, to a single point. And this provides now the entry point into our problem of sound. And I will quote Kafka, how this is brought about. This is the first person account of this animal. I must have slept for a long time. I was only wakened when I had reached the last light sleep, which dissolves of itself. And it must have been very light, for it was an almost inaudible whistling noise that wakened me. I recognized what it was immediately. The small animals, whom I had allowed far too much latitude, had burrowed a new channel somewhere during my absence. This channel must have chanced to intersect an older one. The air was caught there, and this produced the whistling noise. First, I shall have to listen at the walls of my passages and locate the place of disturbance by experimental excavation, and only then will I be able to get rid of the noise. So this is the first entry of this mysterious sound. There is a sound, there is a noise, which appears at the edge. And first, most significantly, at the edge of sleep and wakefulness. And I will be coming back to this. This is very important. And then, obviously, on the edge of the inside and the outside, the intrusion of the outside into the inside. And its first interpretation seems to be easy enough. This must have been caused by some tiny animals, which must have dug some channel, hence the whistling noise. It's a nuisance, but it shouldn't be too difficult to locate it and to fill it in. He says, I must have silences in my passages. So to be the master of this space is to be the master of our sound and its emission. But this attempt comes to nothing. I quote further on. I don't seem to be getting any nearer to the place where the noise is. It goes on always on the same thin note, with regular pauses. Now I saw the whistling, but again like a kind of piping. But whether trifling or important, I can find nothing, no matter how hard I search. Or it may be that I find too much. Sometimes I think that nobody but myself would hear it. It's true, I hear it now more and more distinctly, for my ear has grown keener through practice. Though in reality it is exactly the same noise wherever I may hear it, as I have convinced myself by comparing my impressions. End of quote. So this mysterious noise immediately poses the question of its cause and location, as any sound does. The sound is an enigma. It is structurally mysterious. One hears it, one perceives it by its having made its passage inside our head, and the moment one hears it, it places one in a position of having to figure out what causes it. The sound, at its minimal, is always a rupture of causality, and one has to re-establish causality. One has to fill in the missing link. And the first step to determine its cause is to try to pin it down to a spatial location and source. That is, to pin it to a point outside and thus solve the riddle. If hearing a sound pertains to time, it is the time which demands its translation into space. The enigma of sound has a temporality which can only find its solution in spatiality. It requires a partition of space, a singling out of separate and discrete location within the continuous space. But for the poor badger, this spot recedes. I quote, wherever I listen, high or low, at the roof or at the floor, at the entrance or in the corners, everywhere, I hear the same noise. So this temporal fluidity of the sound calls for the special fixation, and this subjectivity is caught in this loop, between time and space, between fluidity and fixation, between detachment and attachment. There is the immediate and pressing question of cause and space, and this precedes the further question of meaning, of making sense of sounds. And furthermore, in this quote, there is this eerie quality to sound. Can it be that only I can hear it? Does it have an objective status at all? Is it in my head, or does it come from outside? So its location poses a problem of whether there is a spatial location at all. There is a moment of phantasmagoria when the sound wavers, if ever so minimally, between its reality and its unreality. One has to make sound tests to ascertain that this is indeed a sound to be located outside and not a sound imagined or dreamed up. The sound is a test. It's always a test of being awake, of being alert, of being conscious, of being in possession of one's senses. But is one ever? The ability to locate the sound is like the test of sanity. For if one can't locate its source, one stands on the brink of delusion, hearing voices, incapacity to make sense of the world at large. One stands on the verge of an abyss, where the sound is suspended and wouldn't converge into space. The tiny sound which wouldn't go away and resists being assigned a place and a cause is like an interminable prolongation of a certain vacillation which is inherent in every sound. The enigma is extended, and if one cannot place it, it infests all parts of space and all parts of mind. I would say briefly, the sound is an entity of the edge. And I will first start with one edge which I think is strategically very important for Kafka, which is the edge of awakening. Now if you remember The Trial, Kafka's best-known novel, begins with an awakening. Joseph K. wakes up in his room, there are two strangers at his bedside, in the space of his homely intimacy, and they will proceed to eat his breakfast, seize his undergarments, and present him the indictment. So this is all on the first page. In the first scene, there is the edge of waking up. And at the waking up, the home is dehomed, so to say. There is the concept of unheimlich, of uncanny, quite literally staged. Awakening is a threshold between sleep and wakefulness, like coming back from a foreign country. But the threshold is tricky, the threshold is a risk. Does one ever come simply back home from some distant dreaming place? There is a tiny crack in between, and the uncanny moment is precisely the moment of not being able to find the homely again, just for a moment. And I will read one final quote from Kafka, which is from The Trial. It's a passage that he crossed out, but which I think is one of the most formidable passages in all Kafka. I quote, "The strange thing is that when one wakes up in the morning, one generally finds things in the same places where they were the previous evening. And yet in sleep and in dreams, one finds oneself, at least apparently, in a state fundamentally different from wakefulness. And upon opening one's eyes, an infinite presence of mind is required, or a quickness of wit, in order to catch everything, so to speak, in the same place one left it in the evening before." See what I mean? One wakes up, one extreme presence of mind to catch the world as it was before. But there is the line of a dislocation of dreams, there is a strange landscape of dreams, and on the other hand, the elusively escaping familiar, the impossibility of placing it. And one needs vigilance to catch it, to prevent it from sliding away. For its dislocation coincides with everything being seemingly in the same place. The dislocated world has to be relocated, that is, it has to be moved in order to be the same place. If awakening is a threshold, then it is a threshold where for a moment the relation between the subject and the world wavers. This quote continues, "Waking up is the riskiest moment. If you manage to get through it without being dragged out of place, you can relax for the rest of the day." This is vintage Kafka. This is really vintage Kafka. So Joseph K. hesitated on this brink, and he would never be able to relax again. He will be stuck in between, no longer asleep, but not yet awake. And the whole novel will unfold on this edge, his protected wakefulness, with which he will struggle throughout the novel, to the point of utmost exhaustion, coincides with a protracted dream, or rather, with what emerged at the edge of awakening, between the dream and the waking life. Kafka's guideline could be stated in these terms: don't give up on this edge, on the impossible in-between where the dreamlike real infringes upon the familiar reality. Awakening is the riskiest moment, the riskanteste Augenblick, and if one lets one's vigilance slip, even stranger things can happen, like one can wake up as an insect. Gregor Samsa, when waking up, missed for a moment the quickness of wit to catch everything in the same place. He didn't find his own body. He mislaid it for a moment. So awakening is metamorphosis. And on the first page of The Castle, the other big Kafka's novel, we have the same. The Lancer car comes to this village and he falls asleep on the first page. He falls asleep on a bench in the inn and is woken up, and everything else follows. So there's always the moment of this waking up, which is at the start of it all. And I have insisted on this. This sound is precisely on the edge, appears precisely on the edge where this animal is waking up.